Time now for business. Let's say hello to Kate Moody.
François.
Let's begin with that preliminary report issued by Ethiopian authorities after the crash of that Boeing 737 MAX last month. Pretty emphatic, no pilot error.
Absolutely. And because of that finding, of course, remember, these are only the preliminary findings that have come out. But because of that top line that everyone's really seizing on, these findings are piling even more pressure on Boeing, the manufacturer of the 737 MAX planes. Now, notably, it's automated anti-stall software, which the plane maker has since tried to update. Ethiopia's government calling on Boeing to reassess the controllability of the fleet, which has since been grounded around the world. Now, as you can see, its shares have actually risen just under 3% this Thursday. The U.S. aviation giant has yet to weigh in on the findings from Ethiopia, saying it's still waiting to review the complete report. The Federal Aviation Administration is also holding back, saying it's still working towards a full understanding of the accident and that it will then take appropriate action. The safety agency has come in for criticism about its close ties with Boeing and the approval process of the 737 MAX fleet. Foreign investment in France is on the rise. In 2018, more than 1,300 new projects were announced, a 2% increase on the previous year. Companies from the US and Germany were the most active, representing an 18% and 14% respectively, while the UK saw the sharpest increase, 33% more investment than in 2017. British companies launched 118 new projects, representing nearly 2,500 jobs, mostly in the industries of consulting, engineering, IT, and finance. Now, for some insight into those numbers, we're joined by Pascal Cagni, president of Business France, the government agency that's charged with encouraging that foreign investment here in France. Thanks for being with us on set.
Thank you.
Let's start with that huge increase in business from the United Kingdom. Is it too simple to just label that the Brexit effect?
I think there is, with no questions, a Brexit effect. But the truth of the matter is that over the last 2 to 3 years, France really reached a new level, right? We moved from a mere thousands project every year to now 1,300 projects on a regular basis, creating or maintaining in excess of 30,000 jobs. And it happens, yes, that the Brexit combined with the different reforms of the governments has really basically calling on more of the investors. And typically, when UK, you want to hedge your bet, you want to basically look at how you're going to continue to do business and access to this amazing market, which is the continental Europe. So it plays a role. How much it is huge, but there is a lot more to come.
Now, although the overall number of investment decisions hit a new high, it was still a slower pace than we'd seen a year previously in 2017. What's behind that?
No, the truth of the matter is that is an amazing result. You need to really put that in perspective. In excess of 61% of all the investment come from our neighbor, from Europe. And the fact that you had a slowdown of the economy, you got a massive constraint on the overall trade agreements. And the fact also, never forget that China or some of the major countries reduced the investment means that this performance is actually remarkable. Because if we would that compare to 2017, you will see that we should have actually gone down. Now, the hard facts also is that over the first 3 months of the year, despite the Yellow Vest, and after 18 months of reforms, we see as a recurrent trend in excess of 20% growth into the investment. So I think we're doing well. We should continue the work, but we're very optimistic overall.
Now, a little bit deeper in there, we've seen fewer jobs being created. It was a dip from the year before. Why, when there's more investment, why is that creating fewer jobs?
No, the truth of the matter is there is a very technical explanation to that. The truth of the matter, less investment have been done into the people company which are in difficulties or in bankruptcies. Or these jobs exist. Now, the good news is that 90% of the jobs have been brand new job creations. And never forget that France do have some very unique assets. We take essentially 1 out of 5 of any investment into the manufacturing site, 1 out of 5 of any investment in logistics. And the research and development, which is really where the government wants to focus and where we believe we've got assets to give, are very booming. So that's really the focus we want to put on.
What's the most common concern you hear from businesses about potentially doing business here in France? What are they most worried about?
They have been very pleased with the reforms. They just want these reforms to be staying around. They want a frame in which we operate, which is essentially tax, legal, the way to deal with employees to continue to be the same. So it's the permanency, it's the continuity of the policy which has been engaged 18 months ago.
Are they saying anything about the Yellow Vest protests? Is this something that worries businesses when they think of setting up here in Paris?
The image that the media have been carrying are actually very worrying. But when you are sitting to the boardrooms or when you're looking at the return on investment and you look at where you need to basically place your bet and your money, France remains an amazing places. And never forget, we were hedged close to basically deal with the same extremism that you have seen in Italy. We have also avoiding the populism of the Brexit, which it represents. So all in all, we are dealing with something which is common throughout Europe, except that we had that kind of crisis, which we need to take into account at a later stage.
Are you expecting this trend to continue in the year to come, or are we going to see something pull back as the effect of those Macron reforms potentially wears down a little bit?
As I told you, the first 3 months, as much as I can tell you for the year, have been extremely positive. We see a 20% year-on-year increase. So I hope to come to see you essentially a year from now with not a 1,300 figures, but essentially a 1,400 or 1,500 figures and more job created or maintained.
We'll check in with you in a few months then. Pascal Cagni, thanks so much for being with us here on France 24. Now, trade negotiations between the US and China are progressing very nicely, according to the US president. Donald Trump is set to meet with the Chinese vice premier at the White House later on, amid reports that a breakthrough to the months-long trade war could be looming. Trump said Beijing would likely commit to buying more from the United States. Less clear, though, is what progress has been made on the toughest issues like technology restrictions and intellectual property rights. Now let's check in on the day's trading action. The pound sterling has dropped back again as British lawmakers continue trying to break the Brexit impasse, dropping back to about $1.30 and €1.16. Investors hoping, at the very least, for more time to avoid a no-deal Brexit. You can see the figures there, down about 0.2% against the dollar, a little bit less against the euro. We saw a fairly moderate close for the major European indices, some pressure on stocks in Italy on reports that the government there is scaling back its already modest predictions for economic expansion. Wall Street is mixed as we wait for news from the latest round of those trade talks in Washington. That'll be coming up in the next few hours, Francois. And of course, we'll bring you everything that we get from the White House.
All right, many thanks for that, Kate Moody. We'll have more business news with those, the latest updates.